So let us have a look in a bit more depth at the brain. Okay, so in terms of understanding your brain and what happens to your brain under stress, let's have a little bit of a closer look. We have all the stimuli coming in to our senses. So everything is coming in here. The 5 senses, in what you see, what you hear, what you feel, everything around you, everything is coming into your senses. Things that you are consciously aware of and those things that you're not consciously aware of. Everything's coming in. It's the thalamus that is analysing these incoming stimuli. Now, this amazing book, The Body Keeps the Score, written by Bessel van der Kolk, is wonderful in the sense that it shows us really the impact that stress and trauma can have on our bodies and the long-term consequences that these can have. And he calls the thalamus the cook. So the cook, he calls it the cook because the thalamus almost takes all those senses and mashes them all together and tells the brain to make sense of it. So the information then gets sent on 2 roads, the low road and the high road. Now that expression comes from a neurologist called Joseph Ledoux, and he has called this, the low road, the very famous amygdala that you may have heard of, which is the processor in our limbic system of all of our emotions. Now the amygdala, Bessel van der Kolk calls the smoke detector. Now I find that a very useful term because the smoke detector in our houses will only go off once the smoke is strong enough to pass the threshold, and then we hear the smoke detector. So in the same way, the amygdala is constantly detecting threat, fear. Is there enough threat for me as the amygdala to pass on the information to the thalamus and the brainstem, which then will release the cortisol and adrenaline, which then will create an increase in heart rate, breathing and blood pressure and other things. But unless there's enough, it won't do it. So it's sitting there as the smoke detector all the time. So the information from the thalamus gets passed on to the amygdala, the smoke detector, but also it goes the high road. It goes to the medial prefrontal cortex, right at the front of our brains. It's where we are analysing logically the stress impulses coming in. Now that is called the Watchtower by Bessel van der Kolk. Again, very useful because the Watchtower is overlooking. So the Watchtower can actually hover calmly and objectively over the thoughts and feelings. It's logically assessing the stimuli that are coming in. So it controls the stress response and it can abort the stress response. So it actually can influence how the amygdala sends the signals on. And so the smoke detector and the Watchtower and the cook, they are interrelated. They're really sending signals to each other. It's a very dynamic process. And the way in which those 3 things happen, now this is oversimplifying a very complicated dynamic process, it's very much based on your personal experiences and your personal triggers. So your unique patterning will influence how all this works. And when it becomes difficult is when trauma has impacted on the development of your limbic system. Trauma is also, as we know, very sensitive for the brainstem. Trauma can influence the limbic system, the brainstem, and the prefrontal cortex. So what can we do about this? We need to be aware of the patterning we have as individuals, and we need to be aware of any traumas we've had and how these might have influenced it. Also, we need to watch ourselves and be conscious about how are we responding to external stimuli. If we are oversensitive, then probably you will know. If you are oversensitive to certain stimuli, you will probably know, but unless you consciously engage with it and are open to learning, remember that link between openness to learning and self-awareness, you might detect something, but then you need to respond to it. So unless you then respond to it, that's almost a redundant, empty thought. Ah, I feel stressed. Ah, I feel stressed. Yeah, so now what are you going to do about it? Are you going to actually act on that feeling? Because unless you act on that feeling and do something with it to repattern your limbic system, all of this process, then you won't actually influence the thresholds at which the amygdala sends the signals onto the hypothalamus, and then we have the biological responses, or how the medial prefrontal cortex actually is capable of being a good watchtower. So what we're doing through the act of writing, we are helping the capability of the medial prefrontal cortex to be strong in its function of being a watchtower. So what you're doing by writing, you are actually strengthening your ability for your mind to stay calm. And we have found through research, there's research that shows that writing actually trains the prefrontal cortex. And if you are writing things down after a stressful experience, we have got data and research that shows that it calms the mind. So writing is very, very powerful. So writing can help us to strengthen our medial prefrontal cortex. And now hopefully that you understand its role a bit, it helps you to realize its significance and importance, because without your watchtower, you will be completely at the mercy of just your biological responses. And what happens then is that people react too quickly between stimulus and response. And that's when people might have anger management problems. Their logical thinking doesn't come into play before they react. Now we know that under pressure, we are all more likely to respond more quickly to certain things. So our system can only deal with so much. Some of us have a long fuse, some of us have a shorter fuse in terms of the gap that we have between stimulus and response. But we all need to take our personal responsibility to self-regulate our emotions. And you will know yourself how balanced you are, where you are on that scale in terms of, very quick response in terms of behaviours, or getting angry, or getting frustrated, or not having the patience to attend over time, and your decision-making skills becoming impacted, or your thinking getting lost, having to remove yourself from a situation, those sort of things. You will know that about yourself. You will know if you feel so aggressive internally that you want to physically express yourself. If that happens very quickly, that is a problem, because it's only one step between thinking about a physical aggression and doing it. Same thing about swearing or using language aggressively or putting people down. What we need to do is we need to be self-regulated. And under pressure, we're more likely for the energy to come out negatively. So in terms of writing, by writing, you are regulating and training your watchtower. You are making your medial prefrontal cortex function more effectively. You are impacting on the entire dynamics between these structures in your brain. And let us not forget, they're not little compartments that are mutually exclusive. Of course, they all function together in a very dynamic fashion. You may have heard of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is what we now know is our brain's ability to take over functions from each other, to be very adaptable and agile. If we have had any damage, another part of the brain can take over and support that part of the brain that is damaged. And we are incredibly adaptable physiologically. However, we need to stay strong, and the medial prefrontal cortex is a hugely important part to helping us to hover over all of our emotional inputs. Let us not take for granted that we will always be adaptable and agile, because the more our originally intended structures work well, the better we will continue to work well in the future. So let's train our brains and stay healthy consciously so that we're strong into the future and healthy, because our emotional self-regulation is the thing that's going to keep us happy and keep us able to enjoy our lives and our relationships and our work and our purpose in our lives going forward. So by writing with intent and purpose, you are actually training your watchtower. You're making it more possible that you can carry on being calm and abort the stress response, so that the smoke detector, the amygdala, doesn't actually go off and tell the body to activate its stress responses. So writing is really a technique you can use in a very deliberate fashion, and it's far more powerful than you may have realized. So the other thing I wanted to share with you is the hugely important factor of bringing conscious enjoyment into your life. And actually you can do that through words as well. Of course, it's location, it's people, it's surrounding, it's activities. Choose with intent to bring enjoyment into your life, because enjoyment helps emotional self-regulation and the regulation biologically and psychologically of our brains. We need to consciously create a positive energy around us and within us. Do that consciously. Make sure that you are checking in. How do I feel inside? I'm not feeling so great. I'll do something about it. How is this making me feel? Well, if I have to do this again and again, let's try and find a way that I don't have to do it so often in future. If a lot of tasks drain you, find somebody you can delegate to, somebody who loves the tasks you don't like. Because if you love what you're doing, you're more likely to be engaged and energized, and your brain is more likely to be at one with the entire messaging internally. So the way the electrical and chemical signals are internally messaging each other will be much more positive and healthy than the message saying, release adrenaline, release cortisol, which will put pressure on your body. In terms of words, consciously use words that build you up and make you feel good. Be aware. Remember that link between self-awareness and openness to learning. Be aware of the words that make you feel drained. And if you're around people that put you down, make sure you remove yourself. You can, of course, block things out. Like people do a lot of training with energy, say block it out, don't let it come to you. But still, it takes energy to block things out. So ideally, you don't want them there in the first place. So put yourself in situations where there's positive words, positive feelings around you, where the energy is positive for you. And also cleanse yourself from words or actions that make you feel bad. Just do it deliberately. And when you're writing, consciously use words that you love. They will make you feel good. You will bring that positive energy intentionally to you. So look at images that you love. Go into nature. Hear sounds that you love. Bring the positive things to yourself, into your environment, into your inner world deliberately. Say good things to yourself. Use words in a very intentional manner. So when you're journaling, you can use a pen that you love. Maybe that helps you to express your words internally to yourself. Write your positive affirmations so that you actually are telling yourself lovely, beautiful things. So by using your skill to intentionally give you enjoyment, that will actually help you to calm your limbic system. Monitor and design and take control and seriously your inner and outer world. Remove things that make you feel weak and negative. You are the controller of your own life. You are completely and utterly in a position that you can extend the sphere of influence you have by working more on your inner self. Now, when I say sphere of influence, I mean the sphere of influence over your own control area. So, if you feel you're only in control of this much, by working on yourself, you will extend how much control you have over yourself. By writing things down, by thinking about things through words, by using words carefully, by using positive words, by writing about feelings, by writing about things that are purposeful to you, we'll come on to that in a second, you can extend the control you have over your life. So in terms of the importance of thinking about what you're writing about, Dr. Merzenich has developed some interesting research and which shows that seriousness of purpose is a really important part of consideration of what you write about, because it needs to have something that's purposeful to you. Now, of course, what's purposeful to you will not be the same thing as what's purposeful to me. So your purpose, if you have purpose, then that will activate positive emotional signals to your limbic system because it's important to you. And you need to actually write with purpose and about those things that have purpose to you for the writing to be as effective as possible. It's key then to supporting function or reversing functional decline. Is that not amazing? So if you're writing about something that is purposeful to you, you will be supporting the function and reversing functional decline, even reversing functional decline of your brain. And you need to consciously write about feelings, because if you're writing about feelings, then that will directly impact the functioning of your limbic system and the interconnectivity between the thalamus and the amygdala and the medial prefrontal cortex, and the dynamic that happens between those organs. And of course, this simplifying a very complicated process, but this is a dynamic process that evolves and has unique patterns for you. So it's all about making sure that you are checking in with the thresholds that you have in your own unique patterning, because some people will respond more quickly than others. So if you are oversensitive, you will respond more quickly to certain stressors. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to increase the time between stimulus and response by writing and using other strategies like breathing, yoga, meditation, the things that help us to calm things down, and going into nature, seeing beautiful things around us. By doing that, we are actually helping us to extend the time between stimulus and response, and it's helping you to calm your mind in a very conscious manner. So it helps to organize your logic and your emotions. So ensuring seriousness of purpose is hugely important, and that is so beautiful. And writing about feelings, again, another psychologist called Dr. Matthew Lieberman, you might want to research, has done a lot of research on if you're showing distressing images, followed by the opportunity to write about them, there's a very clear response by the brain that having the opportunity to write about them will calm the brain. And there's lots of detailed research obviously done under scientific conditions with control groups and everything. And writing is not the same as typing. It has a different physiological response and a different calming effect on the brain. Write about feelings, keep a journal, make sure you bring enjoyment into your life, and bring that together by having deliberate and intentional strategies. And hugely importantly, remember that social support is the key factor that we now believe will always play the greatest role in the sustainable mental health. So it's the key factor in helping us to restore mental health as well as to gain mental health in the first place, or maintain mental health. So if social support is so important to every one of us, regardless of who you are or what thresholds you have or what patterning you have, your unique patterns, if it's so important to all of us, we need to build our own internal strength first. And that internal strength will help us to give support to others. That is why it is so fundamental to help ourselves to be strong within ourselves, so that we are there to be strong for the people around us. And then that'll have a ripple effect on the society at large. So if 2020 is not a year that we can take stock and deliberately implement strategies to help ourselves, then I'm afraid there's nothing that will make us do that. So I hope humanity becomes wiser as a result of this very difficult year. I wish you all the very best. Many thanks again to Montegrappa for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be here to look at the link between writing and mental health and self-awareness and learning. Learning is my passion, conscious intentional learning and becoming intentional learners and leaders of ourselves and others. Please visit our website investorsinlearning.com. You can contact me there. I love discussing, I love exploring, I love finding solutions for people. I'm there for you to discuss anything further. And thank you very much for listening, and I wish you all the very best.